All right. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Pivot to Your Purpose podcast. Listen, go ahead, like and share this podcast with your friends and your family. I want to make sure that I share it on my timeline. So give me a moment here so that they can join in on this conversation. So, tonight, we are going to be talking about emerging from depression. So, hopefully, you had the opportunity to watch the previous podcast, which was really, really good. I had Lisa DeCandia on, and we were talking about grief, managing grief during the holidays. Okay, so make sure you go ahead and share. If you're on YouTube, share, send the link to your family and friends. If you are on Facebook, make sure that you go ahead and share because tonight, as I stated, we're going to talk about emerging from depression. So I think I said grief earlier, but we're going to be talking about emerging from depression because truly one of the stages of grief is depression. But before I even get to specifically the topic on depression, I want to kind of highlight some of the stages of grief. And listen, this topic is very personal because, as many of you know, that I lost my mother July of last year. So I am still going through the healing process. And also, I'm still on my grief journey. So, just to let you all know, first and foremost, one of the first stages of grief is denial. And that is what I experienced when I heard the news that my mom had transitioned. And I know there are so many other people who are out there currently right now, and you all are experiencing grief. You're going through the process of grieving, you're going through the process of bereavement. And one of the first things when you get the news is like, oh no, I know such and such did not pass. I know they are still with us. Somebody please tell me that this did not happen. Right? Why are we saying those things? Because we are in denial. We don't really want to accept that that person have literally left this side of this thing called life. All right. So denial is one of the first things in the grief process. Another part, and again, we're going to get to the part about emerging from depression, but I want to again just state it for those who are joining on. I want to kind of talk about the different stages of grief, highlight that. Another component or stage is anger, feeling angry about your loved one leaving. And you can be angry with yourself, you can be angry with other people. If you know you have a relationship with God, you also can be angry with God. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode of Pivot to Your Purpose podcast. So, anger is part of the stages of grief. And I myself, I share with you all, I was angry. I wasn't angry at any of my family members, but I was angry with God because I felt like she should have been here a little bit longer. So let me give you all some additional information. Oh, we got someone on. Good evening, Brianna. Thank you so much for joining. So, again, if for those who are on, make sure that you comment so that I can include you in this conversation, and also make sure that you like and share this podcast. Another stage of grief is bargaining. You're bargaining, you're like, I could have done this better. Or, if your loved one was sick, you're saying, I should have, should have took them to the doctor or should have encouraged them more to go to the doctor. What could I have done to change the outcome of this situation? Some things are just beyond our control. When it is time for some of our loved ones to depart the face of this earth, they're going to depart because their time have expired. God has now decided, okay, it's time for me to take your loved one on. They did what they are supposed to do on this earth, or maybe they have not lived out everything that they should have done on this earth. But whatever the reasoning is, sometimes we feel like we should have done more. So I know one of the things that I observed is that my sister, she was going through the bargaining process when my mom made her transition. She was saying, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. And we had to literally, I know I had to talk to her and say, Sherry, you can't blame yourself. You can't fault yourself for our mom's transition. It was her time, and God saw fit for to take her at, the tender age, I would say, of 72 years old. So she lived a great life, but in essence, I still saw how my sister was bargaining and kind of like blaming herself of, basically my mom passing because she felt like she could have and should have done more. So I'm not sure if any of you all have experienced that, but that is one of the stages of grief. So we got some more comments. Let me recognize Chander is on. Good evening, Chander. Thank you so much for joining in on tonight. Tiffany Ford is on. Good evening, Tiffany. Thank you so much for tuning in on tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brianna said bargaining is a big one. I definitely agree with you on that, Brianna. It is definitely a big one. And as I stated, I witnessed it myself. I saw, my sister just bargaining and kind of like blaming herself. And I had to tell her, Sherry, you can't walk around here feeling guilty. You did right by mom. You did everything that you could have done for her, So at the end of the day, you have to just release that mindset of feeling guilty. Okay. So that's one thing that she dealt with. Brianna also stated, because you think about anything you can do to bring them back. Absolutely. Absolutely. You think about everything that you could have done and you wish you could have done and you wish you had the power to bring them back. But again, we just don't have that sovereignty, that power to do that. She stated that, or keep them here. Absolutely. I definitely agree. She stated that that's so true, but it's hard not to. I know it is hard not to go through the bargaining stage, because you start to reflect and you start to say, okay, when did something change in this person? Did I not pay close attention to the changes that may have been taking place in their life or in their health? And then we say, well, maybe I was so caught up in trying to do, my own thing or reach my own goals or focus on X, Y, and Z, where I should have been more observant or attentive to individuals. So I definitely understand that it's hard not to. So it is part of the grief, the different stages of grief. Roger also is on. He said, "Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Roger, for joining in on tonight." So y'all, listen. Feel free to jump in during this conversation. And just to recap, I just covered at least 3 stages of grief. I talked about denial. I talked about anger. And if you just joined in, I was talking about bargaining. But tonight, I am going to focus on this one here, depression. Okay. Depression is one of the stages of grief. Now, some people may say, well, I did not experience depression when I lost my loved one. That is okay. But I will say for myself, I experienced this particular stage. So let's look at what depression is first and foremost. Depression is a feeling of sadness and hopelessness that often results with the loss of a loved one. I was sad. I really was. I was sad, and I had a sense of hopelessness. Now you will probably say, well, Lenore, you are a woman of faith. How in the world did you get to the point of maybe feeling hopeless? Well, let me tell you something. Just because a person is a woman or a man of faith and they believe in God, that does not exempt them from the mere fact that they are human. Okay? They have feelings, they go through various emotions just like anything else. And so I experienced this, but there were people that was observant when I was going through my different stages of grief. And that's important too, to make sure we're going to get there. I don't want to run too far ahead of myself. Let me read some of these comments. I'm gonna get back to this. Okay. So Brianna is tagging some people. Great, thank you so much. All right, for tagging people. But she also have a comment. She said, yes, especially wishing you can pay more attention to signs that may have been there. Yes, yes, yes. Paying attention to those signs. And when you start thinking about what sign did I miss, then again, as I stated, you start sometimes guilting yourself for not really paying attention. But going back to this part here about the feeling of sadness and hopelessness, this is something, it's natural, it's a natural occurrence to feel this way whenever you lose a loved one. Depression is real. So as I stated, one of the symptoms of depression is feeling of sadness, right? Another sign is loss of interest in activities you normally enjoy. Now, all of us have different hobbies that we enjoy doing. Some people like bowling, some people like going to the, movies, some people like fishing, some people like working out. You name it. Some people like thrifting, such as myself. So if you have certain activities and hobbies that you enjoy doing, when depression hits you, you lose interest in those things. And as I was stating earlier before I went back to the comments, it is so important to have people in your life to notice when you are going through those different stages, and they are able to pour into you while you are going through those different stages, but not just pour into you, but be a listening ear to you as you are going through those stages. Now, those individuals may be able to help you to a certain point, and then you may have to get some type of clinical help. Maybe you need to see a grief counselor, maybe you need to see a therapist, or outside of clinical, maybe you need to seek pastoral counseling, someone who is familiar with grief and helping people navigate grief. Maybe you need to seek out that. But it's so important to have folks around you that notice, okay, I understand she's grieving, and they give you that space to grieve. They're not trying to rush you through that grief, but then they can also tell when you are just leaving from the state of being depressed to severe depression. And we're going to talk about that in just a few more minutes. But I want to read some additional comments here. Dr. Vanessa Kelly is on. Hello, Dr. Vanessa Kelly. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining in. And Brianna said, yes, having a support system is so important. As I stated, when you are hitting those different stages of grief, it is important to have a support system. Okay. And we're going to talk about that more, Brianna, as we continue our conversation. But another part of, or should I say, a symptom of being, in this state of depression, you start notice that your sleep patterns are off, changes in your sleep, and you're like, what in the world is going on? I can't really rest. That's a normal part of the grief process. That's also part of a symptom of depression, that you cannot sleep. Why? Because you're thinking about your loved one. All right. And right here around the holidays, I'm telling you, a lot of people are falling into depression because they realize mother is no longer here, grandmother is no longer here, dad is no longer here, granddaddy is no longer here, auntie, uncle, whoever that family member is that played an important role in your life, it starts to have an effect on you right around the holidays. Why? Because you start reminiscing on the memories, the different dishes and things of that nature that they prepared. But there is a way to emerge out of depression. There is a way, okay? And we're going to talk about that. All right. So Brianna have a statement here. She said, how can you identify who are individuals? How can you identify who are individuals you can count on to help you through grieving? I see. Sorry, autocorrect. I was able to navigate through your comment. So, how you can identify those individuals? To me, are those individuals that have been where you are. They have experienced grief. They know what it is like to lose someone near and dear. So the individuals that were surrounding me, that was embracing me, those individuals had lost a parent or they have lost someone very dear to them. And they would, those who did not necessarily lose a parent, because losing a parent, in my eyes, I'm saying it from my viewpoint, may be a little bit different from losing another type of family member. But I can't speak on that relationship because sometimes that auntie may have been that mother figure, or that uncle may have been that mother figure. So I will not put like a range on the bond, okay? But I would say that those individuals that can relate to you and know exactly what you're feeling. And then I had individuals that I could count on where they may not necessarily have lost a mother, but they empathized with me. And they would say things like, I can only imagine how you feel. Those words in itself were words of comfort. They didn't say, I know how you feel. Why? Because they never lost a mother, but they lost a loved one. So they would always preface their comment and saying, I can only imagine how you feel. All right. Brianna stated, my recommendation or my coping skills to get through the holidays are inviting myself to to other individuals' gatherings. She definitely does. Why? Because she and her, she's she lost her father. So the way that she helped cope through gift, she shares the table of other family members and friends that she love and that she have a bond with. You say, hey, I'm stopping by. I'm coming by. What do you all have? And I mean, just serve herself and make herself feel like family. But again, that is part of the coping mechanism to emerge out of depression during the holidays, which is so important. I love that, Brianna. Thank you so much for bringing some humor to the conversation. Chander said, and like you said, being a woman of faith and praying and believing God for a miracle, and He doesn't answer the way we prayed. Yes, yes, yes. I can just stop right there after that period. Okay. That right there in itself speaks volume, Chander. So thank you so much for just saying that first part. Now, you also stated it takes a while for you to understand that, yes, he answered. But okay, Chander, you go get up on this podcast and bring these people a sermon here on tonight. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. However, but he answered according to his will, and sometimes it's hard to understand and comprehend. Yes, it's hard to understand and comprehend because, again, we have to respect his sovereignty. You will hear me say that a lot. You heard me say in the last podcast when I had Miss Lisa on, you're going to hear me say that a lot. We have to respect his sovereignty because his will sometimes does not align with our will, right? So that's when we, again, go through that anger stage, right? That bargaining stage. Well, God, if you would have did this, I would have did this. If you would have let her live longer, I would have. We go through that. But again, at the end of the day, he makes the final decision, right? So thank you so much for that, Chander. Yvette Hayes is on. Good evening, Yvette. Thank you so much for joining in on the conversation. And Chander, you got some witnesses here already for your statement. Brianna said, "Amen." Sherry Dawson Williams said, Caleb is yelling at the TV asking if he can say something. Yes, Caleb, you definitely can say something to Auntie. Go ahead and say something and make sure that your parents add your comment in the chat. Even though you're 3 years old, you can still be part of this conversation. So if you say, hey, auntie, or tell auntie something, make sure they add it into the chat. Okay. So Brianna said, period, and I won't change it for nothing. And if you all are trying to figure out what she is saying that she won't change for nothing, is this part here when she stated that she goes to other people's homes and during the holidays, during the gatherings, and she basically make herself as part of the family and say, hey, I'm here to pick up a plate or I'm here to pick up some cake. That is what she does. And not only do she just eat, but she also take to go plates. That's what she does. All right. But listen, like she said, she's not going to change it for anything because that's how she emerges out of depression during the holidays. So thank you so much, Brianna, for that. And yes, Sherry Dawson Williams, yes, tell her to bring him on. Listen, if you want to come on, I'll bring him on for about a minute or two. All right. Sherry also is agreeing with what you said, Chander, and also again, Brianna there. And Sherry stated Brianna is always handling her grief by asking people, what are you cooking? And bringing her containers. Listen, I know that may sound humorous, but this is her coping mechanism. Now, not coping in the mind of gluttony, right? But food brings her comfort. And if food brings you comfort and you know how to basically eat in moderation to bring you comfort, listen, if that helps you emerge out of depression, do it. Okay. But we're going to talk a little bit more about, again, the different signs of depression. Okay. So another part is we talked about changes in sleep, lack of energy, right? You don't feel like you have any type of energy. You feel tired of all the time. As I stated earlier, you really don't have that interest in doing the activities that you want to do. And then some people, they just want to sleep, 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 sleep. That is a sign when you have lost a loved one. I know with me, I wanted to stay in the bed. I did not want to get out of bed. But again, it was those people that were in my circle, and I'm going to talk about how I emerged, that helped brought me out of that depressive mindset. Okay. That is something that we definitely have to pay close attention to. Listen, we're going to go to a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. A look, it's a feeling, and every moment deserves to be captured in its most timeless form. At Bougie Bree Photography, confidence meets the camera. Every pose, every detail becomes unforgettable. Whether you're stepping in front of the lens or into the spotlight, your beauty becomes cinematic, transformed into visuals that move you. And when it's time to celebrate, strike, smile, shine. Our luxury photo booth turns every event into a bold, unforgettable experience. Your story is more than a moment. It's artistry. It's emotion. It's you, captured with intention and elevated with elegance. So whether it's photography, videography, or a high-end photo booth, let's create something iconic. Book your luxury experience today. Bougie Bree Photography, where your confidence meets the camera. All right. So if you are in need of photography and videography needs, please reach out to Bougie Bree Photography. Okay. Now, listen, she does an amazing, amazing job. Okay. All right. So let's continue this conversation. Okay. We're going to continue this conversation here. Now, Brianna stated, now, why you had to bring up gluttony? Listen, I had to bring up gluttony because, you know, people who also find comfort in food can lead to gluttony. So that's why I had to bring up gluttony. All right. I have to even have to remind myself. Okay. So let's continue the conversation. Yes, sleeping is my coping mechanism. Even some days when I feel sad, I rather sleep it off. See, again, different people have ways on how they um, deal with grief and deal with, like she said, even just being sad, sleeping it off, sleeping it away. Okay. Now, Keisha is on. She said, "Hey, friend. Hey, friend. Thank you so much for joining and tuning in. I'm so glad that you're able to tune in tonight." Bougie Bree, as I stated, the commercial and that part and that half of the podcast, Pivot to Your Purpose, was sponsored by Bougie Bree Photography. Yes, yes, yes. Capturing moments the natural eye can't see. And Bougie Bree Photography, the owner is in the comments making all these comments tonight, and you all are finding out more information about her. So listen, you see her sense of humor, and even when you behind the camera, she will help bring your vision to life. Okay, now let's continue our conversation here. Another symptom when you are in depression is loss of appetite or increase in appetite. I don't know about you all, but when I lost my mom, I don't think a lot of y'all saw my pictures, and I didn't post a lot of pictures then, but I lost a lot of weight. I mean, I was, yeah, I lost a lot of weight. I don't know how many pounds I lost, but it could have been about 30 pounds, I think. I was skinny, okay? But I didn't have an appetite. I was depressed. I did not have an appetite. And those individuals that was in my circle, they would try to they would try to encourage me to eat. And I'm like, I don't want to eat. They were like, you have to eat. If you don't eat, you're going to fade away. So I had to emerge out of the depressive mindset and start eating. My husband will buy me food. I'm like, I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat like the Lenore, you got to eat something. Right? Now my loved ones are saying, Lenore, you need to pull back. Okay. But loss of appetite or increase of appetite, that in itself is a symptom of depression. Okay. Sherry Dawson Williams stated that I allow myself to cry. That's okay. It's okay when you're going through grief, when you're depressed or whatever like that. It's okay to cry. Again, it's natural to cry when you lose a loved one. And I remember one day, y'all, I cried so much when I woke up, my eyes were like shut. I could barely open my eyes. My eyes were swole, but that was just natural. Grief is the price that you pay, one of the greatest prices that you pay for the person that you truly, truly love. Okay. Sherry, excuse me, Brianna said, yes, Sherry. And I know that's a big one for you. I love that you're allowing yourself to feel and cry, right? Because some people I know they don't like to show any type of emotions. They don't like to cry. Okay. And Brianna said she was shriveled up, like the old folks say, very concerning. I was, y'all. When I was in my depressive state of grief, I was shriveled up. I wish I would have had a picture to show you all, but I was. I mean, it wasn't good. But even before, I think what helped me also throughout the process to help me emerge from the grief, I'm coming jumping ahead, kind of jumping ahead of myself, but what helped me emerge from the grief, the depressive state, should I say, clarification there, is that one day I was riding to church with my mom, and I didn't realize in depth what was going on then, but out of the blue, she just made a statement to me. She said, Lenora, stop worrying about me. I'm like, huh? Because I'm looking, I'm like, nothing wrong. What do you mean? She said, stop worrying about me. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I could have lost it right then. I'm talking about just emotionally could have just cried and just burst out in tears. But I was crying on the inside like she knows that I have a genuine concern about her. And out of the blue, she just pick it up. But that's the kind of woman she was. My parents loved them to life. My mom, I even love her in death. She was just that type of woman. Okay. Right. So Brianna said, you emerged out of grief. I absolutely did. I emerged out of grief. I had to. But I still have my days, but I would say, and I know people say you get better with time, you still have your days but you start on the healing journey. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Okay. All right. Sherry said, ain't nobody tell you to pull back. I don't know what you're saying. Okay. All right. But yes, she did say I was scribbled up. Scribbled up. She definitely did. She definitely did. And if you all are watching and you like to send me some stars, feel free to send me some stars on tonight. I would greatly appreciate it. Keisha stated, yes, friend, I remember you losing all that weight, but I understood the grieving process. Yes, Keisha, you saw me, right? As early as what, November of last year, when we were together at an event, I'm sure you looked at me like, and even before November, you came and supported my dad during his pastoral anniversary, and you just looked, you like, friend. You didn't get on me, you like, friend. And I knew you was like, friend, you gotta eat. You gotta eat. Cause yeah, you this is not good. But again, when you are going through those different stages, some people they stop eating, and then you have individuals who eat their way through grief. You have some who pack on the pounds, and you have some who lose the weight as they're going through the depression state. Okay. So thank you so much, Keisha, for that. And oh, from the table, that's what you were talking about. Okay, I got you, Sherry. I got you. All right. You tell me to pull back from the table some. All right. Okay, we both can do that together. But thank you, sis. All right. So let's keep going here because of time. I want to get through this. Okay. Now, another thing is feeling worthless or guilty. When you are depressed and you lose a loved one, you start saying, what is life worth living for? Right? I had that conversation with myself. Was I going to take myself out of here? Absolutely not. Okay. But I was like, there's no reason why I should still be here anyway. My mom is gone. And I start feeling guilty, like when we celebrated like Thanksgiving, like my mom is not here. How can I celebrate Thanksgiving? But I had to realize I still have a living parent alive. I still have my father. I still have my husband. I still have my sisters. I still have my brothers, nieces, and my nephews, my church family, my friends, my friend. Okay. And these individuals, they still need me. And not only do they need me, but there's other people that I have not even met yet that still needs me. They need my God-given gifts. They need me to utilize my purpose to help them navigate life, to help them embrace their purpose. So when you start to feel worthless or guilty, you have to remind yourself, God have me still here for a reason. And until I have completed everything on my journey that I supposed to complete, then I'm not going anywhere. And that's what I had to remind myself, even as I was going through my stage of depression and slowly emerging out of depression. Let me read some more of these comments here. Sherry said, I love this conversation. Thank you so much, Sherry. I appreciate that. And again, if you all are watching, please like and share and tag 10 people. I got some hearts going on here and I got some stars. Yes, let's send some stars. I think I got a certain amount of time to get some stars, but yes, send some stars. And you know, when you're sending some stars, just think about I'm sending some stars to help someone to emerge out of their grief. You're sending them that light, you sending them that love, okay? So feeling worthless and guilty. But one of the things I want to remind you all is that one of the final steps of grief is acceptance. Once I got to the state of acceptance, realizing that my mother was no longer going to be returning back here, I had to say to myself, okay, Lenora, where do you go from here? And I shared this for the first time about 2 weeks ago. And I may change, I'm pivoting a little bit, but I'll get back to my main topic because this story is ringing in my head. When we talk about having faith in a situation that you want God to turn around and he doesn't turn around, you can struggle. Your faith, not struggle, but your faith is tested, right? But your faith is not destroyed. And when I realized in that moment that my faith was not destroyed but tested, I realized that I had to accept what God allowed. And the story that I wanted to share, and I said I shared this about 2 weeks ago, is that the greatest act or last act of faith that I saw my dad do for my mom is that when she took her last breath and when the EMTs came to the house and when they tried to revive her, he literally put the Bible in action. And what I mean by the Bible in action, he did like Elijah did. He laid himself on top of her to pray that God will bring back life into her body, just like Elijah did with the Shunammite woman. But God saw different. And even at that moment, he had to, even though he didn't go through all of the stages of grief yet, but he had to accept that this was it. And even now, through the process, we are still going through grief, but we have accepted. I can't speak for everybody, but I have accepted that God made his decision and he does not make mistakes. And that what am I going to do now since my mother is no longer here? Am I going to continue to stay depressed or am I going to continue to move forward in the work that God has called me to do and also utilize the wisdom that he has bestowed upon me, that my mother, that my father have bestowed upon me? Am I going to just allow that wisdom to die or I'm allow that wisdom to live and help others along their journey? So I just wanted to share that. Okay. All right. I had to take my time to bring that out because that was important. So Brianna said, life is amazing, especially all we deal with. It is. There's so much going on in the world, and there's so many people who are depressed. But I'm telling you, you can find hope in God and in others. And we're going to talk about that. Okay. We almost there. Keisha stated, God knows I need you, friend. Whoo, laugh out loud. Yes, you needed me. You needed me because we have some good conversations. And listen, I'm just so grateful for people like you, Keisha, and others that God have really put in my life to help me throughout my journey. This girl will come from Charlotte and say, let's go out to eat. Friend, where you want to go? Birthdays, she may not hit it directly on that day because of work, but she gonna find some day in October to come down here and spend time with her friend. And I love you for that. I love you for that. Sherry Dawson said, yes, it was hard seeing my dad losing his soulmate, but God is keeping him strong. Yes, God is keeping him strong. You're talking about someone who spent 43 years of life together. It was hard. It still is difficult for him. But what helps him emerge from the depression and other states that of grief is that there are people who are surrounding him that is uplifting him in prayer. Your phone calls matter. Spending time with people, we all are busy. I get it. But when you can make time to spend time with a person who is grieving and being there for them after the funeral, that is what matters. Because when someone passed, everyone just overtake you. Oh, I'm so sorry, this, that, and the third. But it's after the fact, after those weeks and those months, And that's when the phone gets dry. That's when the text messages dry up. That's when the visits stop. But it's so important for us to remember those who have lost loved ones, to make sure that we're there and being that supportive friend. Okay. Sherry said Keisha Rogers is a great friend to my sister Lenora Laster. You are right, Sherry. However, one correction: friend is spelled Frannn when we talk about Keisha and our relationship. Just want to say that, but I love you, sis. Brianna said, yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Brianna. Now, because of time, real quick, how I emerged from depression. First, if I was in church, I would say, giving honor to God, who's head of my life. It was God. And I put parentheses, Jesus Christ, so you can know who I'm specifically talking about. It was Him that helped me emerge from the deep depressive state that I was heading into. Because why? I was depressed, but I was on the edge of falling into a deep depression. Okay, a deep depression. That's where I was on my way to. So it was Him that lifted me up to pull me out of the situation. It was also my family and my friends. Family and my friends. Brianna, that you see in this chat, that's chit chatting, having engaging in this conversation, she told me one day, she said, put on your clothes, we riding out. I don't want to ride. We riding out. Let's go. And I didn't realize that her and my sister had a full blown conversation about me and about how they saw me like, okay, she depressed, but it seemed like she's letting this thing really, really get to her. And we don't want her to fall into a acute, or I would say a deep state of depression. So we got to figure out how we can help her through this. So they would say, let's ride out. Let's grab something to eat. Let's do things together. So it's important that you have your loved ones to be there for you. It's important, when if you're married, your spouse be there for you. Your if you have children, it's important for your children to be there for you. It's important for them to be there. You know, my husband like, let's go, let's do something, let's ride. And it was difficult for him because he never saw me in that state. So I'm sure he was happy, like, Lord, I'm so glad her sister and her god sister and her friends, they're reaching out. Because men, sometimes when we as women going through certain situations, it may be difficult if they've never experienced that before and helping you navigate it. But they're there for you to support you and be that listening ear. All right. So family and friends are important. Okay. Let's read these additional comments here. Okay. Um, Brianna said, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. It was nothing but God. Absolutely, Sherry. Absolutely. And Brianna have and did, and I hope this not these little clocket emojis, but she got a little hand, and I'm just gonna go with the raised hands, okay? But she said and did, absolutely. Brianna also said, I will always stress and encourage having a support system. That's right. Family and friends, that support system to help you emerge out of that depression is so, so important. Okay. That's important. So it's important that you ask God, as she stated, to bless you with that support system, because everybody may not necessarily have that support system. So just praying and asking God to help you out throughout that process and utilize the different resources that are out there. You may not have immediate family or friends, but if there's a grief counselor or if there's other programs in place to you can take advantage of, take advantage. And there's free grief support groups that are around that you can participate in. Some people are like, I don't want to go to them because it's just going to make me feel sad and this, that, and the third. Well, the first thing is you have to go and try at least and see if it's a fit for you. And if it's not a fit for you, it's okay. But at least explore these different opportunities. Sherry said Brianna was definitely our ace during the time of the loss of our mom, including our church members, but they were taking it hard as well. Yes, because she has such a great impact on everyone's life. But it was our, family, friends. Church support that helped us through that. Yes, Brianna, I hope you really are laughing at this comment real here. Okay. So yeah, absolutely, Sherry. Um, Another thing that helped me emerge out of my grief, my depression, excuse me, was reflections. I started to reflect on the good times. I started to reflect on the memories that my mom and I, my family, that we shared together. That in itself helped me through the process. So, real quick, if you can, I want you all to write how did you emerge from your depression? I shared some of mine. I shared through God. I share family and friends. I share through reflections. If you will, just make a comment and let me know how you yourself emerge from depression. Brianna said, goes to chat. Are you saying that you go to the chat like you go in a chat and you chat, or are you coming into the chat? Oh, gotcha. Getting out of the house. That's how you can emerge from depression. Absolutely. Because sometimes you say, I'm just going to stay here. I don't want to be bothered. I want to be bothered. I want to be bothered. It's okay for you to sit and have your space, right? But when people start to notice, okay, she's leaving, as I stated earlier, not to sound redundant, she's leaving from that state of being depressed to a severe depression. Girl, you got to put on some clothes. Man, you got to put on some clothes. Let's get out this house. We got to get out this house right now. Okay. Sherry stated, what helped me through my grief was going through grief counseling and going to see a therapist. Okay. So she did too. She had a grief counselor and she also sought out therapy. Now, some people have been like, well, Sherry, you are a woman of faith. What are you doing going and receiving grief counseling? And why are you going through therapy? As I stated earlier, you can have faith, but yet and still, you can also receive clinical support. All right. But yet still, Brianna also stated traveling. Sure, are you trying to come on? All right, gotcha. All right. Traveling. Brianna stated traveling is one of the ways that she also is able to emerge from depression. I love that, Sherry. I love that. That you sent me. But yes, Brianna, back to you. I love that. Traveling is so important. That helps you get throughout that process. Okay. She also stated that being around others is important. Being around people who support you and that's going to pour into you is so important. Okay. She also said music. Yes, music is very powerful. I love the fact that you said music. Tiffany Ford said, I use workout and worship. It's a time to spend with God first thing in the morning. I also am actively engaged in therapy. I love how you put that, Tiffany. Workout and worship. WW. So I like how you all are putting these in the chat on how you emerge from depression, because these can be some strategies that other people may not necessarily have considered, but because you're sharing them, they can possibly try some of these strategies to help them emerge from depression. And I love that about spending time with first thing in the morning with God. And I think about David when he said, early, God, will I seek thee. So spending time with him in the morning, it sets the tone for today. And I like when she said actively engaged in therapy, because you have to be actively engaged in order to reap the benefit of therapy. Okay. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to go listen to the therapist and see what the therapist say. The therapist is telling you, okay, so what did you learn from the last session and what have you implemented since the last session? I don't know. I don't remember. So how do you expect to develop and see some type of growth? You have to be actively engaged in the strategies and then the guidance that the therapist is sharing for you. And if you feel like the strategy is not the best strategy, then tell the therapist, are there some other strategies that I can explore? And then you can explore some together to find out which ones will best fit you and where you're currently at in your life. Okay? All right. So Sherry said, Noah, okay, gotcha, sis. Keisha said volunteered in the community. So that's another way that it helped you emerge from depression. Is volunteering, giving back to someone else. And what I noticed from that, Keisha, is that when you're volunteering in the community and you're giving back to other people and you're having a conversation with those other people, you then began to realize that someone else is going through more than what you're going through is. Now, it's not more than what you are going through. Now, it's not discounting what you're feeling and how you're going through, but then you start hearing other people's stories. And in that current conversation with that person and them sharing their story, you're able to have a sense of gratitude as you're emerging from depression. Why? Because what that person may be experiencing, you may not be experiencing. Like, wow, I'm so grateful. So when you're out volunteering, someone may say, well, I just lost my job. Wow, I have a job. May not be the job I want, but I have a job and something to be grateful for. So thank you so much for sharing that, Keisha. She also said being connected to prayer warriors, so important. And if y'all don't know what a prayer warrior is, that means that person is going to war in prayer. That means they're going to intercede. They're not giving up till they feel like God has actually heard them, not only hear them, but that God will actually answer them as well. So make sure you have people in your life that will intercede on your behalf and pray with you, not against you, but pray with you and for you as you're emerging from depression or whatever that you may be experiencing. Sherry said, Tiffany MB3. Yes, MB3, honey. She's dropping some knowledge on here tonight. Sherry stated, my therapist would tell me therapy would only help if I came in with the mind of wanting the help. And that's important because a therapist will tell you if you don't come in after a certain amount of time, and if you don't want the help, they can't help you. And if you don't come in, as I stated, after a certain amount of time, guess what? They're gonna be like, I might as well discharge you. You just sitting there, you just sitting on my roll, and you're not being engaged. It's not helping you. So maybe you have to seek out some other strategies and tools that will actually help you through the process. So listen, I hope on tonight that you have learned different ways on how can emerge from depression. I will tell you, as I stated earlier, finding a great and having a great support system is so important. Having a relationship with God is important too, because you got to remember what his scripture says: cast all of your cares upon him because he cares for us. He really does. Despite what we see, despite what we may be feeling, despite what we may be going through, we got to remember this, that God is with us. And y'all, let me tell you something. I am on this live, and guess what? My little nephew, he's calling me. I'm going to answer. I'm going to do something unorthodox. Hi, Caleb. You want to be on the video? Caleb? All right, Caleb. You see? People see you. All right, Caleb. Y'all see Caleb? This is what I go throughout the day. So this little boy here, he definitely helped us emerge from our depression. His beautiful smile, his beautiful face, his just energy. He's amazing. Okay, Caleb. Can you can you tell my audience hello? Say we love you. All right, man. So I'll talk to you later, okay, after the show. So this little boy here, great. My niece and nephews, I love them all. Um, this one here will call me and play his drum and want me to sit there and watch him on video to play his drum. But listen, I know that many of you may be going through different phases and different things in your life, but I have this amazing journal here. Is from stuck to stepping in purpose. It is a digital journal and it has some very great and amazing prompts and writing tools for you to reflect about where you are in life and where you want to get to. So, if you have not downloaded a copy of this digital journal, make sure that you go and download a copy. And if you have not purchased or downloaded a copy of my digital magazine, The Pivot, make sure that you download it. And since we're on the topic about grief and emergence from depression, there is a story in here that talks about a picture worth 1,000 tears. I'm going to say that again, a picture worth 1,000 tears. Go and download this digital magazine. Y'all, I'm telling you, that in itself, that story in itself is powerful. It is powerful. So you are able to get the magazine and you're able to get the journal and the digital download. Okay. Let me read these last comments and then we're going to wrap it up. All right. So we heard from Caleb. Everyone heard from Caleb, right? Caleb said, "Hey, Auntie," and he called me right on the live. Brianna said, "Very informative. Thank you so much, Brianna. I loved hearing from everyone else too. It was great. It was absolutely great." And they said, "Hey, Caleb." So I know you're still watching. So yeah, and they love it. He was definitely in full character. Caleb's smile is amazing. And if anybody knows anything about my mother, she had a beautiful smile. So it just runs in the family. And again, I'm grateful also for my father because he is he's going through this process like a, I'm going to say like a champ. Have and when I say like a champ, do a champ have some hard days and good days? Absolutely. But that still does not take away the champ status. I hope y'all caught that right there. All right. He loves his auntie. He absolutely. Make sure that you log in on LenoreLassiter.com and download a digital copy of the journal. It is a great read, a great read. So, y'all, I pray and I hope that this podcast tonight was informative and that it actually helped you all through your stages of grief and through your stage of depression. And just know that you can emerge from this, okay? Regardless of the situation, you all can emerge from it. You all have a great night.